Hey everybody in the FFBE Global Facebook group and on YouTube, if you happen to see this here, I'm here with another series of questions from for Ask an Old Mog. And these are the types of questions that I'm really actually really excited to talk about and really interested in. These are the types of questions that I call teaching to fish questions. And I don't know if you've ever heard the expression, you know, if you give a man a fish, then he's fed for the day. And if you teach him to fish, he's fed for the rest of his life. Or my alternate version, my favorite of these is, if you light a man a fire, he'll be warm for the night, or if you light a man on fire, he'll be warm for the rest of his life. I want you to think about that for a minute. These are the types of questions that ask, you know, if I just knew something, would I be better off? And what could I learn that's going to just help me to survive and be self-sufficient? And that's why I really like talking about these. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into it. And I was, browsing through the posts on the page that have been going on for the past couple of days, and I came up with a handful that I thought kind of all talked about the same thing. Worth noting too, all these questions came from either players that were saying they were new to the game, just started this week, or had been taking a break for a while and were, coming back and wanted to kind of see what was going on. So let's take a look. The first one here, I noticed that some Sephiroths and Tifas are hitting very hard as companions. What are some NV units that have similar killing potential? I think that's a really good question because not everybody has Tifa or Sephiroth. You look at a lot of content creator guides and they show, I've got X, Y, and Z damage unit, oh, I'm doing this clear with Sephiroth, and you're like, oh, I don't have Sephiroth. What can I do? And so that's a really good question. Another question here, I'm kind of lost when it comes down to the best units of each role. Can you help me out? Yeah, we can. I'm going to talk to you about why those units are good at their roles. I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to talk about each one, but we're going to teach you through this video how to look at, what these skills do, what these limit bursts do that make them so good in the first place. That way you can just know, what units are good without having to ask. And then finally, what have I missed while I was gone? Is half my friends list still going to be Sephiroth? If not, what is a new meta? That's going to kind of point again towards, what is current and what is good and how we decide what is good. So I think that's going to be useful to think about as we go. And to help us with that, I've got my game here and I've got a couple of units picked out. Sephiroth, I'm going to be that guy. I've got a Sephiroth, and I've also got a Duran here. Both of them are at EX +2. And in some ways, they have some similarities. We're going to look and see what that is all about here. So we're going to go and click on the units page. And if you click on a unit, you see their stats. That's all normal. But what are we talking about here? So if you look at a unit, you want to look at their details page, and that's going to tell you more about what that unit is good at, what they're able to do. And also when you're looking at skills, you want to look at the skill descriptions to see, what is good about that skill, what it does. Not just look at the damage. Damage is very important. Obviously, we're trying to do damage with these units, but why they do damage is more important than how much damage they do. So let's click on Sephiroth here, and we're going to be talking about his shift form. If you click on details, it's up here at the top. There's a little plus sign over here on the left. Click on that, you see all their killers and all their stuff. You see that he's an LB damage booster without any equipment equipped. He's got 150% already in his kit. He's a true double hand unit built in, without any equipment on. He's already got 200%. So you can kind of see how you're building him. And then if you click on his limit burst, you see some really good stuff here. And so I'm gonna pause here and look over at the left-hand side of my screen. Does the skill in question have unmitigated damage or partially mitigated damage? Does it apply an imperil? Does it stack? Does it have a skill that you can use to increase their modifiers? These are all questions you want to ask when looking at, is one limit burst or skill good compared to another one? In Sephiroth's case, he gets a katana imperil that gets added when he uses his ability. 25% for 4 turns. It does 20,000 damage with a damage boost of 15,000 additional damage every time you use it, up to 1 time, which brings you to a maximum of 35,000 damage. And it's a dark skill, you can see that there, which means it can directly benefit from a dark imperil without you having to imbue him with dark element. So that's pretty strong, right? Everyone knows that Sephiroth, you using this, you're gonna do it, 2 times and do a lot of damage. Let's take a look at Duran for a comparison. All right, so I'm going to shift him and look at his limit burst. Now, his limit burst on cast number 1, it's technically just a little bit stronger. So it does 24,000 damage instead of 20,000 damage. It does not specifically stack. When you use it, he gets a buff that gets added to him for 2 turns, which adds 10,000 damage on top of that. So, but that lasts for 2 turns. So, theoretically, if you can use his limit burst once and then do it 2 more times, he's going to do 34,000 times, or 34,000 damage, or multiplier damage every time he uses it, for that 2 turns, and it's going to refresh every time you use the limit burst. So you can really load up some damage there, but it doesn't go any higher than 34,000. So while he starts out just a little bit stronger than Sephiroth, he doesn't get any stronger with his multiple casts. Also, there's no weapon imperil, so you have to rely on another unit to give him an imperil for something. His main weapon is a sword, so you'd want somebody who could do a sword imperil. And if you're bringing a sword imperil unit, why aren't you just using them? They're probably going to be better. But it depends. Some are, some aren't. And it's non-elemental, so you'd have to imbue him with an element to be able to benefit from element imperils. So all that said, you look at Sephiroth here and Duran, which one comes out on top? Sephiroth does more damage after 1 turn, has the imperil right away, has the dark damage, which can be without having to get an outside imbue. He just does elemental damage, and if enemies are weak to dark, goodbye. They're going to be gone. And you can make them weak to dark with an outside imperil, or you can use Sephiroth's own skills to apply an imperil. So he's got all that built in. Duran does not. So even though the numbers look pretty similar, 35,000 or 34,000, Sephiroth comes out on top because of the imperil and the potential benefit of the dark imperil. So that's how you want to look at it. You want to come in and you want to look at this and say, like, okay, what is the damage that they do? How does that damage build up over time? And what can I use to do that? And looking at that, you can kind of see that, Duran is similar to Sephiroth after 2 turns, but you're going to rely on some extra help to get him to be at about the same, some sort of weapon imperil and element imperil to do that. That's my answer to that one. So, to come back to the questions, the questions had to do with what are some good units for each roles? What am I missing out on? What's the new meta? So let's take a look at some examples of some units. Just go back to my home screen because it looks cool, right? Home screen. So what are some good examples? Obviously burst DPS, damage that done in 1 turn or stacking up. Sephiroth, Tifa, Sky. These are non-limited units, so you can get them whenever. You can potentially pick them up, whatever. So those are good examples, but not the only examples. There are a lot of new units that are like super limit burst damage, or super limit burst users that do really big damage, not as much as Sephiroth and Tifa, but still very good, respectable damage. Some of those are single hits, some of those are chain hits. So there's lots of examples there of ones you can use. Super limit burst damage units are pretty cool. Good examples of just all around breakers. Cacteria just got updates in the most current update of the game that made her breaks even better. Made some of her skills good for Clash of Wills, so good unit there for an all around breaker. And Water and Earth Imperiler, which might be cool if you're using Duran and you want to imperil Earth and apply Earth and Water. Very cool. Gilgamesh is another really good example of an all-arounder. He can do light imperil, dark imperil, all element imperil, good breaks. He can do an omni cover. Lots of good stuff for just a kind of a generic breaker you could throw onto any team. Gilgamesh. Good examples of kind of tanks you can use for most content. Physical tanks: King Bahimi, Gabranth. Magical tanks: Shoreline, Fina, and Daisy. Probably the best, most accessible right out the package. Going to be good for you. Or the to talk about a kind of a current meta defining unit, Maeve just came out yesterday. Really tanky, really bulky, perfect support abilities for the current Clash of Wills boss. Dragon and beast mitigation and skills that are going to help against dragons and beasts, so very useful and meta defining for tanks. Can also do physical and magic cover, depending on which form you're in. So very, very useful and flexible. Healing is not very exciting for most people, just because, you know, with dark visions, and with Clash of Wills to a bigger, a different type of extent, you're really just trying to not take any damage at all, and so healing is not as important. But Kresnik is very good as a healer. He's very good as a limit burst support unit. He's really, really good in Clash of Wills as a morale support unit. So, you know, if you're looking for a healer, Kresnik is the meta for that. Elemental support, these are going to be units that are going to be like empowering your use of different elements. You know, White Dragon Ling is going to be using light and fire. Louise is going to be fire. Cetra Descendant Aerith is either light or fire, depending on what form she's in. The new Nicole and new Sakura units are really good for water and thunder, respectively. And, you know, over time, we'll probably be seeing more and more of these types of units that do, you know, field effects and amplifies for different skills. You know, the old Neo Vision's Awakened Lightning is really good for lightning support as well, if you don't have the new Nicole. And she also has a gun imperil, which is, you know, I was using her gun imperil for everything that needed a gun until I got Louise yesterday. So we're very excited about that on my end. I got a Kresnik yesterday or today too, so pretty cool. Haven't started using them yet, but I'm excited to. So those are some examples of like good units that can kind of fit into pretty much any party. But if you're going to be focusing on, whatever's new is just obviously going to be better. But as far as just like accessible stuff that's going to be helpful for you right away, those are some good examples of some things. So with that, I think we've kind of talked about the questions as far as I want to answer. And I hope that it is useful to think about. So just to kind of go back to, you know, what we were talking about, this one. You want to look at the units. You want to look at the, we didn't even look at a skill. Let's look at a skill just to compare, right? So we talked about, you know, let's see here. Let's talk about limit burst. You can do the same thing with skills, right? So if you click on a skill, it's going to show you this skill does, you know, 7,200 damage. It buffs his strength. It does a boost for limit burst damage. It fills his limit burst gauge. You know, compare that to Duran. Just for kicks, right? 7,200 damage. It gives him damage reduction. It gives him reduction against damage or dragon enemies, and magic reduction against dragon enemies. Could be useful in Clash of Wills. I had not considered that. That's kind of cool. I'll have to think about that. I haven't put him on my team yet. I might have to do that because my tanking is struggling in Clash of Wills right now. That's been my one area that I'm struggling right now, is surviving turn 1 and 2. Kind of absurd. Thank you very much for that, boss. But yeah, you want to compare abilities side by side just like that. You know, ooh, this one does 10,000 damage and buffs him and does limit to burst damage buff. Kind of cool. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about when I say you want to look at them, you know, side by side and see, you know, why is this skill good? Really, anything that's going to stack you up and, you know, add to your overall burst of damage is going to be good. I obviously think that Sephiroth comes out on top compared to Duran. But I think that Duran with the right support, you know, could do some work for you. Sephiroth's stats are going to be higher, so he'll do more damage. But if you don't have Sephiroth and have Duran for some reason because you were around for the past 2 weeks and were pulling on those banners, you know, there's Duran for you. Maybe a more relevant, readily available unit you can pick up today would be Neo Vision's Awakened Cleome, or Cleome, or however people pronounce it. You know, she's a katana user. She's dark. She stacks up her abilities and then unloads a single hit, just like Sephiroth does. So pretty good. Not as good as Sephiroth, but, you know, budget Sephiroth, Neo Vision Awakened budget Sephiroth, right? So yeah, that's kind of how you do it. You look at the details. You have to go into it and compare apples to apples, or apples to zucchinis in the case of the title of this video, right? Because not every unit's going to be the same. So with that, I think we're going to duck back over here. And I hope that everyone could gain something from this video and learned a little bit. I definitely learned a little bit. The first time I recorded this, I accidentally said that Sephiroth Fluent Burst did 350,000 damage modifier. It does not. 35,000. You know, I had to go back and redo it. So there you go. Typing is important. But I hope all of you have a good evening, a good weekend, and enjoy the current event. For those of you who are new or welcome, or you're coming back to the game, welcome back. Feel free to check out the rest of the videos in this series for information that is geared towards new or returning players. And we post these videos once a week. You know, I post these videos usually Friday night, Saturday morning. If you have a question or a topic that you think you'd like to dig into a little bit, or if you'd like to help out with these videos in some way, you know, feel free to let me know. If you don't mind your question being credited with your name, I'd be happy to put you in it and tag you in it so that you can see the response. Just let me know if you're okay with that. Or if you see this video on YouTube, feel free to drop a comment there. I'd be happy to go over those with you and look into some questions there. But either way, have a good evening, and I'll see you in the game.